Just we'll mute it, the YouTube first, once you are.
Hello, everyone. We'll give people another second or two to join. Hello, everyone. My name is Moshe Nave, and I'm an SAP Community Advocate. Welcome to today's SAP Community Call, Connect with Expert, SAP Integration Suite API Management. We have Shri and Raghu, Product Managers for SAP Integration Suite. Raghu, please take it away.
Thank you, Moshe. So a very warm welcome to everyone on the call. Let's start with we will start with an overview, a brief overview of the API management, and after that there will be a demo by Shri, and then we'll open for questions. Yeah, so feel free to chat, post your questions in the chat. Thanks. So. So before we start on the API management brief overview, we'll generally start with SAP strategy, which is our intelligent enterprise. And intelligent enterprise key pillar is integration. So SAP Integration Suite is one of the strategically important key pillar of the SAP strategy. So coming to the integration suite, we have SAP Integration Suite is a hybrid integration platform which connects to SAP, to non-SAP, to third-party, B2B, government, B2G, and it has a lot of capabilities which can like integration suite, machine-based learning, open connectors for non-SAP applications. We have data intelligence, one domain model, event mesh, cloud integration, which is more popular, and we will focus today on API management. So let's go to the next slide. So before we go into the brief about the API management, we would just want to see why is that APIs are important. So in today's world, we see that more and more our customer landscapes are becoming heterogeneous, and so is the business complexities. So APIs will provide us a very simple way to connect and simplify the complexity in this business use cases and scenarios. So that's why APIs are one of the building blocks. So if we come to the, so APIs are one of the building blocks of the digital journey. So all other enterprise, small or medium enterprises are already laid out a plan for their digital journeys, and APIs plays a very important role for their modern application development, for modern some integrations to unlock their data. It will help you to empower the users. It will innovate, do some innovations on that. So APIs basically are one of the saviors of this, you can say, for the current digital world. So now, why you need to manage APIs? We know that APIs are one of the most important in today's world, but why do we want to manage APIs now? So to manage, we need to manage APIs because we want to provide a harmonized access, secured harmonized access to the our customers API access. We would like to manage APIs, traffic management. Would like to take care of denial of service attacks and all. And we would like to also have a governance at place, and which we can use best practices and all. We'll see this. And finally, we would like to know, monitor the APIs. What is happening to our APIs? You will get the real-time insights about the APIs. Who is using my API? What is happening to my APIs? Based on that, you can make monetization decisions, right? So these are the important aspects where we would like to. For these reasons, we would like to manage our APIs. Yeah. So this is the these are the four key components of the API management. One is API designer, API portal, API business hub, and API gateway, which you can connect to the backends database or a cloud service over SOAP, REST, OData, APIs or microservices, data integration, so and so. So API designer is a a component where an API developer will define the API specifications, will document the specifications using the Swagger or YAML. So this is a place where you generally define and design the API. So now coming to the API portal. API portal is one of the important aspects here. Here, this is the place where you create an API proxy, the existing APIs, API proxy, and you can secure the APIs, publish the API for consumption, secure, and if you want to monetize it, create a rate plans. And this is the place, API portal, where people will be able to monitor what's happening to your APIs, get the real insights about the APIs. So essentially, as a persona, API admin or an API owner will log into API portal, and he will be able to manage, meter, and monetize the API. So the next one is one of the developers' favorite, like API Business Hub Enterprise. Here, the application developer logs into this API Business Hub Enterprise. Here, we have an onboarding as a service. And once the application developer onboards to API Business Hub Enterprise, he will be able to discover the APIs which are published by API admin or an API owner. And he will be able to explore the APIs. He can see the APIs, like experience the APIs. If we have a sandbox attached to it, he will be able to see what's happening to my API. If tryouts and all are also available on the API Business Hub Enterprise. So with that, he will also get more information. If this API is monetized, he can see the rate plans are attached to it, and all. Then he can make a decision to use that API to build the apps, some extensions or whatever as per the business scenarios. So next comes is the API gateway. The API gateway is essentially a runtime of the API management. Yeah. So that's about the key components of the API management. So I'll hand over to Shri for a demo.
Hello, good morning, good evening to everybody. Shri here. Hope
Shri,
you're able to see. Can you hear me? Okay, let me share my screen. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, Shri. Yeah, I can see. You can see.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so hello everybody. Welcome to the today's community call, and where we will be having a small demo on consuming the different APIs from an API management portal into our BTP application studio, BAS, business application studio, where you'll be able to create application out of it by consuming the different APIs which are published in a developer portal. Okay, so this is a seamless experience where the APIs which have been created with the different types, whether it's an open connectors type or an on-premise one, or it is a cloud integration or an internet. So how exactly we'll be able to consume these APIs directly in the application development platform. Okay, so hope you're able to see my API portal screen. Okay, so as a developer, let me just refresh it. You will be, once you are able to log in into the API portal, you'll be able to see a lot of details, something like this. This is a typical developer portal who will get started with the application API development. Okay, so as you're already aware, we have multiple options available here where you could import already existing APIs which are published from SAP or by our community or different partners, and you can directly import these APIs into our API portal as an API proxy. Then you can start fastening your all developments. And there are different types of API providers you will be able to create it. And as Raghu has already mentioned, there are a lot of options like to monetize it, and there's a monitoring. Even you could test it locally. Okay, so from the demo perspective, I'll be creating an API proxy, and then I'll be creating a product out of it, and how you'll be able to consume it seamlessly in an application development platform that I'll be able to show you today. Okay, so as a prerequisite, I have already created an API provider for our gateway systems. I think you're all aware of it, where you'll be easily able to get the gateway systems. Even as in, if you have an S user, you'll be able to get it. And I'll be exploring some of the OData APIs which are available in gateway system, and I'll be consuming it and I'll be exposing it as an right. Okay, so I'll click on create, and then I'll select an ES5 as API provider, and I'll click on discover. So now I'll be able to see a lot of APIs or OData APIs which are exposed. You'll be able to see it here. Okay, let me pull in some of the sample gateway sample API, and then let me just change this name to community demo 0911. Copy paste the same here. Let's fix 0911 and put it as version 1. Get an API out of it. Okay, so now I have an API on this, and this is how a typical proxy looks like, where you'll be able to provide all the documentation state or the life cycle management of an API, whether it's an alpha, beta, or isn't an active. And then comes the proxy endpoint, where you'll be able to maintain a lot of properties which are uh, available as per our runtime configurations, and there are rules you could create it to move the or make a decision with the where exactly the call should go. And there's a target endpoint. In our case, it's a provider, so you'll be able to see this is connected to provider. And similarly, there are API proxy URL, multiple options are available, and there is option to even create a resource, or this is a standard resource which is available under the gateway service, which successfully pulled in. We're able to see a lot of resources here. And for the demo purpose, we will have some policies to the target endpoint, where I've already created a policy template. So this is very helpful whenever you start uh, doing an end-to-end implementation project, where you'll be able to see the highest reusability factor, right? I mean, you have a policy template, you just keep on importing or applying this policy template, which are generic in nature, so that you can reduce the development effort. And then I'll click on update, and then I'll go ahead and deploy it. Okay, yeah, you can see API registered successfully. Then I'll go back here and I'll create a product, and I'll name this, say, prod, and I'll put this in the data. There are a lot of other options which you could always explore, and I'll select the one which we have created. Okay, and also some other data from the business partner. Let's also select other APIs. Okay, now I have two APIs. Let me go ahead and publish it. Okay, I'm able to see a successfully published product here. Now I have all the roles and access to the business application studio, where you can create multiple applications. So this is how the BAS looks like, and there is something called as service center, where you'll be able to see all these APIs which are being exposed to this particular BAS. Okay, so there are certain settings that needs to be done on the BTP cockpit side, like creation of destination to point out to the BAS from API management. All those settings are completed. Now, if I go here and click on this, so you'll be able to see my product. Okay, you can see here there is a com demo product. Okay, and when I click on this, okay, a bit, it asks for a subscription. Okay, so in a typical life cycle of an API management, how exactly we do? We create an API proxy, and then from a developer experience, so we will get into API business of enterprise and create a subscription out of it, right? Then we'll be getting the different keys and the endpoint URL which a developer will consume it, right? So what I have done here, I have created a product, and this product is directly available in the Business Application Studio, right? So here I have a direct option to create a subscription to the product which I have created. So I'll just go ahead and put it a subscription, click on enter. Okay. So now in the background, it's creating a subscription in the developer portal. Okay. Or APA Business of Enterprise. Now the subscription is created and you will be able to see the subscription name. If you click on this, should be able to open the API Business Hub. Okay. Yeah. API Business Hub Enterprise, where you can see the subscription that has been created, the last modified by whom, and different service keys, everything it's visible. Okay, so if I go back here and put it here, and if I go back here, you will be able to see different entities which are being published by our ES5, right? The exposed by ES5 gateway systems. So if you click on the live data, you'll be able to visualize it. Okay, so there are different shortcuts which are available, and you can directly create a project from this particular service, and you will be able to create a Fiori application and just display the data as it is, or some of the fields only you want to select it, you could do that, and it will fasten the whole application development cycle. Okay. Yeah, this is how seamlessly you can connect your API management portal with an developer applications. I think earlier we used to have the web UI kind of tools in the new world, and now we have a bash where you'll be easily consume these APIs directly in the bash, and you can create an application out of it. Okay, yeah, I think this concludes the demo part. I'll hand it over back to Moshe and Raghu. Raghu, you're not audible.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for a nice demo. So let's see the chats and we'll answer the questions there. I'll just go to the 1 second. Yeah. Yeah. So
I think
monitor the questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Raghu.
Yeah.
I could see one question from the
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Make an API management available for an on-premise use cases. Currently, we do support on-premise integration. Like in the API portal, you have an option to connect to the on-prem system. But yes, we do have furthermore options. Like we'll be coming up with an hybrid deployment option, and it is already part of the roadmap where you will be having a seamless experience between the cloud integration and API management, and you will be host in your own what you call landscape or your own hyperscaler solutions. Yeah, it's still possible, and the much more details you can get it from the roadmap explorer, which we are planning for. I think somewhere around the next year mid, you'll be able to see that progress.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, with the API management, yes, you'll be able to use between S4HANA and the cloud, not between the cloud connector and S4HANA, but cloud connector will act as an secure layer for exposing the data from your on-premise system and getting the data into the API management layer for the complete governance.
What's the need of creating subscription? There is one question called what is the need of creating a subscription?
Yeah. Let me add that. Basically, the subscription is a developer perspective. like whenever there are different personas which are available, like as an API developer, you are creating API-ifying the backend data. Like for example, S4HANA, you have something like a cost center or a bank data. So some other APIs which are already exposed in a S4HANA, right? So as an API developer, so you'll be setting up all the authentication, everything, and what are the different resources you want to expose it, right? So all these things will be done by an API developer. But as an application developer, so all these details are must. I mean, the only thing which he's looking for would be the what data that comes in, right? So as a consumer, as an application developer, this subscription is very much required, because the whole implementation part is must from a consumer perspective. I could see one more question from Laura. API management portal also be used standalone without the integration suite? No, we don't have that option as of now. It used to be available earlier. Now we have bundled all the services as part of the integration suite. So if you go with the integration suite, all these services are available.
Yeah, but it used to be there. To add to the Shri, it used to be there in new. Now we are only focusing on cloud integration. Integration suite as a product. So the next question is, I'll take it maybe. Can you explain about API proxy product with example? So
Okay.
yeah, I'll go ahead actually.
Yeah,
So
sure.
API proxy. Yeah, API proxy is something the API, which is just a proxy URL, which is you are going to give it to your consumer. So API proxy is just a proxified API where, and this proxy layer you will manage like adding a quota policy. We can also showcase about that, like quota policy, or you can add some security policies and secure APIs. So all these things you can do on the API proxy layer. The API proxy is just a proxy URL. And in this layer, you can do a lot more things. You can literally manage the APIs. Once this API is managed, this API is published. It is published with the product. Product is just a container which contains APIs. So this is published. So this product can be now once the product is published, it can be consumed. Just now you have seen, right? The product can be API can be consumed by creating a subscription. The example for it, this we can generally talk about is like why we want to create the product when there is an API directly. So we want to classify the APIs. For example, there can be a healthcare APIs one enterprise wants to club, maybe some special APIs which one current team is working on with a current team name, with a partner, maybe partner, you want to publish only particular APIs to the partner so that he can view. So these are the reasons why the product is required to publish the API. So I hope I answered your question, Manisha. Else you can repost the question here. Where can we see examples of API management in combination with SAP CPI?
Yeah, let me take that question.
Yes.
Yeah. So basically, we have a type called as cloud integration. So maybe let me share my screen for a minute, if it is fine for you. A second. So basically, we have a seamless experience between the CPI and API management. So we are having an unified view now with a from a consumption point of view. Let me share my screen. You are able to see my screen, Raghu?
Yeah, I can see.
Okay, let me open. Okay, let me just open an API portal. And so whenever we create a kind of integration artifact, right? Like, So why do we use the CPI? I think there was already a call, community call that happened, right? So the cloud integration is nothing but our the process orchestration, or where you kind of an on-premise version. We used to have a process orchestration where you used to do the all the modeling of different processes altogether. Like you have an enrichment, you have a transformation, and mediation. There are a lot of tasks that our cloud integration could do, right? So from an API management and CPI perspective, right? So whenever you create an artifact of the type, either as a REST or a kind of a SOAP or a OData, so you'll be able to directly consume it in the API management. Okay, the different examples, if I go back here, like how exactly you can do that. So there is something like an API provider which we have of the type cloud integration. So we could see here and see there are this is the CPI endpoint URL from where you'll be able directly call the different APIs or discover the APIs which are being created on the cloud integration perspective. The different use case perspective, when you haven't some S4 HANA, the classical IDOC scenario or kind of a proxy, the proxy scenarios, or you have scenarios where a lot of transformation required, right? And after doing all this transformation and you want to govern or expose it as an API and govern the whole endpoint, right? Then the CPI and API management will come into picture together, right? So when you click on the create, and if you have something, let me see if it works. Sorry, it doesn't work. There's one more. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So here you could see the different OData, SOAP, REST, all these services are available here, right? So if I select something like this thing and create an API out of it, so automatically it takes the endpoint, and I need to pass the credential types for this API, and then the whole API proxy will be created. Okay, so this is where the whole I think API management and CPI will come into picture. Hope it answers the question.
Yeah.
Yes, we do have a schematic approach for API product application, like I think Venma, right? So we have, I think Raghu already explained, and we have an option to create the API specification using YAML and other open source codes, right?
Yeah.
Or languages. So if I understood properly, this is what you are referring to.
Or maybe I can show something if he is interested in. I'm just thinking of opening some. I have to share the screen. 1 second.
Sure.
Some issues.
You're able to share?
I'm unable to share actually. Something's happening.
Okay, let me take it up. That's fine.
I wanted to share and show them the diagram of
Yeah,
how.
that's fine. Let me take up that issue.
Yeah.
Hope you'll be able to see my screen, right?
Yeah, I am able to see. Now I think
Yeah.
I am able
So
to share also.
okay, but I have already shared. Let me take it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
sure.
So we have something called as API designer. So we have, if you click on this, there is an option to create the YAML specification, everything in a programmatic approach. So if you take a Swagger pit store as in this thing, let me try to load it. Okay. Put it. Application, open it, and way to and Okay, and then let me come back to here. This thing here. Awesome. So here I'll go here and click on import. Select this YAML, the JSON file from the Packer. This is the one. Okay, now I have it. And you can see all the specification being captured here. Click on this save or save as a version. API proxy will be created out of it. Right? You can see here it's a Rust type. You will go ahead and start development. I think this answers your questions. Question.
I think it is about when Mai has asked that question.
When, yeah.
Yeah. It's defined for.
Okay. Yeah, I think we can take the next question.
Sure. The next question is it possible to dynamically define dynamic values in API management, like customer as a transparent parameter to access OData paths? One and so I think you are talking about the multiple endpoints, like if you are hitting a different resource, it should hit a multiple endpoint. Laura, if that is the case, then we can do, like, you are asking, is it possible to define dynamic values in API management, like a customer as a transferable parameter to access OData paths in one and the same API? So I just want to check whether you are talking about in one API, if I'm hitting the one endpoint, like one resource, it will go to the different API endpoint. And if I try to hit the another resource in the same API proxy, it will go to the, if that is the case, we will be able to do that. Or else you can please rephrase the question. So next question is, that is useful. Here, proxy after adding policies is bundled in the product to publish. In case there is a new API development, then what are the steps to use that in integration? Proxy after adding policies bundled in the
What
product
exactly
to
you
publish.
refer? I mean, use that in integration. Is it something like altogether in a new tooling or different service you are looking to? Maybe you can just clarify that, Manisha. Okay, in which scenario API provider is used, right? I think there are a lot of options, right? I mean, there are places where you don't have a catalog settings, or the places where you have a direct endpoint URL. Then there is not much you could do with the connectivity and everything, where you can use the API without the provider. So when exactly this provider will come into picture, right? So when you have an S4HANA as an on-premise systems, where you need to use a cloud connector to connect securely to the backend system or any of SAP on-premise systems. Because if you are aware of cloud connector, we have different type of protocols supported there, like an HTTP, HTTPS, so TCP for a SAP, non-SAP, process orchestration. A lot of different type of connections are supported there. So you could use that if you want to connect to that. You could use that as an on-premise one. And the typical our own services like open connectors, so where you have a third-party APIs or applications where you are connecting using our open connector service. So there you could directly consume these open connector instances into the API and then API those endpoints. Okay. The other option is already I have shown the cloud integration one, and the rest which is remaining is the internet. So whatever the OData endpoints like Northwind service or any services which would fall into that category, you could use that.
Yeah. So I want to add one more point to that, to the Sri's point. Like if API provider is used, it will help if at all tomorrow there is a change in the provider, right? You don't have to go on change into the lot of other API proxies you created, right? If you are created without provider, you will be creating around 10 or 20 API proxies. But if you create using an API provider, if there is a change happening in the API and your backend system, you will only update the API provider, and then you don't have to worry about the rest of the things, right? The APIs which are already published. So generally, we publish to use API provider.
Okay.
So that's about it.
Can you please point out some use cases wherein the usage of API and CCA in combination adds a value? I think I have already called it out. So where you have, I think, a lot of transformations which are required, right? I mean, the different process handling that is required. For example, you do an enrichment, right? I mean, you want to export certain data, and for example, you have a success factor scenario. So where you want to for some of the data from your HR system and which you want to consume in different applications which are hosted on top of a BTP, right? So the data as it is from the success factor is not enough for you. You might need to do some kind of lookups from your on-premise system, whether it's an S4HANA or some other systems which are hosted on-premise, and you want to do an enrichment. Then the first thing you will create a SOAP endpoint or a REST endpoint, and then you make a call to this success factor system, get the data, and then you make an enrichment, and then you do the transformations, and then a lot of other options which we have in cloud integration, right? So you could do all this thing, and then you expose it to an API management, and securely you can govern all these APIs. Like you can apply different policies altogether, and you can manage like who subscribe to this application and what exactly they are using for, how many calls are being transferred. All these things you could do from the API management perspective. So this is a typical use case uh, using CPI plus API management together. The other cases also the similarly, I mean, you want to sell some of your APIs or your data to the external world, right? So you can't. There are a lot of effort that is required when you want to. For example, take you want to get the data from 6 to 7 APIs altogether, okay? And you want to club some of the data, you want to mask some of the data, and you want to then have a refined data which you want to export to the outside world, right? So then you will connect your CPI to the backend system, you will model everything, the different process, and then you will expose it to the API management. Then you could do all this monetization and the governance part in the API management. That answers your query. I'm facing a problem in Azure Europe tenant free type for activating API capability, but when I did it was sure. I think Raghu, maybe we can give the ops a ticket. You could create always a ticket, and our operations team will be able to support you in that case.
Yeah. True. But this is a look like a specific use case, right? It's not happening to everyone. So better to go to the ops and they will help.
Yep. For the Marty, yeah, I think I'll be able to give the roadmap link. Maybe we'll put it into the chat. Raghu, I think you are on mute. If you're talking.
Oh, you are able, I'm on mute, huh? You are able to listen?
Yes, I'm able to hear you now.
Yeah, sure. I think no more questions are there.
Okay, any other questions or anything?
I think
we have answered everything.
Most of them are answered. Are there destinations different providers? The origin? Yeah, I think we answered most of the questions. Any other questions? Anybody has some questions? Please post your questions. We will answer them. We have some time. So any questions related to anything like policies we are covering, or any typical customer scenario you are looking for that you need some guidance here, you have query on that.
Is it possible to map it?
Is it possible to map user data and pass it in a parameter to filter? If I understand this, Laura, your question correctly, is it possible to dynamic value? Is it possible to map user data and pass it to in a parameter to filter API item dynamically? For example, what I understand your question is, API is giving you some details, like for example, employee name, employee data. Some of the more there are a lot of employee details is coming out from the API, and you want to mask some of them, and you want to provide only few data. That can be possible using our policies. You can hide some data, you can just provide some data required. For example, employees, if you are getting all the details of the employee, if I try to get the employee data, then you can hide employees some sensitive informations and just pass it to your partner. If partner is requiring the data, that can be done. So hope I answered the question, or else please rephrase it using our policies. So what is your recommendation to share CPI URL or create API proxy URL, though no policies are required? Generally, or maybe Sri, you want to take this question? Manisha's, what's your recommendation to share CPI URL or create API proxy URL, though no
Yes,
policies are
I,
required?
I can take that. I mean,
Yeah.
the CPI URL, the most typical ask, right, from a different customer base or from the organizations, right? So governing the APIs, right? When you are exposing something directly from CPI, so who will govern the whole endpoint, right? I mean, it is you, because in case there is a change, right? For example, I think you need to go back to kind of a theoretical way, right? I mean, what is all about the API first approach? We used to talk a lot about API first approach, right? Like you will first decide with the schema set with the backend developers or an API developer or an S4HANA with the developers, right? So you will have some kind of a canonical model where you have all the specifications created, and then you expose it to the developer. So they'll start working, or they'll start consuming that API schema, and they'll start working on their applications, right? In the back end, you will start working with the API developers, where they can use the CPI or any other middleware, or directly get a data, and they can create a custom CDS views and expose that directly to the API management. It's up to them, right? So, but when it comes to the changes, right? So when there is a change of your backend system, let's take, right? So what is the impact on the application to it? So how exactly they consume the data? So even they also need to do the changes again, and there's a cost involved for them, right? So when you go with this API based API first approach, so the development or the application remains intact. The backend system changes. So you will go to the API management, and you will change the backend system to the whatever the new one you are looking for, and the whole landscape perspective, the end to end will work as it is. As an application developer or a consumer, there is no impact or much, right? So this is a typical use case when you merge all this URL with an API, and you will govern it, right? Because when you have a lot of calls and you want to put a lot of policies on top of it, right? When you are calling a CPI, so what are the different authentication mechanisms which are available, right? Like for OAuth, a certificate based or a basic authentication you could do, right? So when you merge with an API management or an expose it on an API proxy, so what are the different policies which are available? The DDoS attacks, or if there are in a second, if there are 10,000 calls are coming, or it will just block it. So we have a lot of policies that will act immediately, so that your data will not be exposed to the wrong hands. So this is a typical use case why you want to expose the endpoints via API management compared to directly from the CPI. Hope it answers, Manisha.
So there is another question from Yunus, like what are the basic building blocks that a client landscape needs to have if we have to talk or set up a APIs in SAP context? Actually, this question somehow it is like we need an API management. If you have a scenario or a use case to publish the APIs, which will be consumed by your partners or your development ecosystem or somebody who wants to consume your APIs, and you want to manage that consumption, and you want to see who is consuming your API, or you want to monetize those APIs. So if that is the scenario, then only you would be able to. If you have APIs, then you need, or you, and there is a scenario to publish the APIs to your partners, then only you can come up with, you can ask for API management. I hope that is answered. You have another question. We have a situation where the client wants to expose APIs out of S/4HANA, but would like to use their own enterprise API management tool, non-SAP. What are the implications of such approach?
Yeah, basically it's up to the customer how exactly, because basically we are talking more about the API management. Unfortunately, I'm not the expert to talk about the S/4HANA, how exactly the APIs are exposed and what are the different paradigms which we are using in SAP, at least because I can talk about it, but I'm not an expert to comment on that. Unfortunately, very sorry for that, Yunus. Uh, and I would like to take a pause here for Laura. I think you asked for a question, right? So if I understood properly, I just would like to share my screen and show how exactly it could be done. The dynamic thing which you are talking about, right? So okay, so we have different policies, like something called as extract parameters, extract
Extract
variables,
variable.
right? Yeah, so if you see here, there is something called as extract variable. So you can extract all the variables. Okay, I think you're able to see, right? I think yes. You have something
Yeah.
called as extract variables. So you will use this policy and you will put it as a pre-flow. Okay, and if you see the different resources or items which are being talked to internally, right? All these are, you will be able to see it here. Okay, so there is something called as condition string. So once you make an extraction of the variables, like user who is calling that, so based on this, you can set a condition here, like request dot that parameter or a variable name, and then you can pass it to this particular item. So this is how you can control. I mean, who are the user is calling, which item he is supposed to be called, right? So this is just an example how you can leverage the existing policies. I think hope it answers, Laura.
So yeah. So any other questions?
Yes, I don't see any. Over to you,
No.
Moshe.
No. So I think we're good. Thanks a lot for a great call today. Lots of interesting questions. The recording will be available right away. The presentation will also be shortly available. Thank you all for joining and have a great day. Bye-bye.
Have a nice
Bye-bye.
day. Bye.